Okay, good morning, Appleby. Thank you for tuning in to watch my chapel speech. This is something I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Ever since I walked into this chapel 5 years ago. I was 12 years old. It was my first couple days of grade 7, and my first time wearing a uniform. I'm sure that my pants were too long, my shoes were uncomfortable, and I was probably drowning my blazer that was way too big for me. But I sat down in one of the chapel pews, and I listened to Jack Jelenic give his chapel speech. Jack was our head prefect in 2015, and he was someone that I looked up to. He gave an incredible speech, and I've had the opportunity to listen to many other fantastic speeches over the years. Now, fast forward to September 23rd, 2020, a lot has changed. Now I'm the one giving a speech, and my uniform fits. This year, it's different though. I won't get the chance to wait by the door and shake all of your hands or give out hugs. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there was been several times where I've had trouble accepting that this year will be different. But today, I would like to take this opportunity to expand on our theme for this year, roll with it. It's a very simple phrase on the surface, but there is a significant and thoughtful message behind it to help us all cope with our current circumstances. Yes, that would be COVID, the invisible enemy. But today, I don't want to make this about COVID. I think we're tired of that topic, and I think it's time that we adapt and improve. In other words, roll with it. It may not be the perfect year we all dreamed about, but we can still make it a great year and come out stronger on the other side. I'd like to read a recent quote from a great leader known to all of us. This year will bring its own unique set of challenges, but also new opportunities, as times of crisis and change often bring with them new innovations and remarkable discoveries. Thank you, Mr. Van Nostrand, once again for your words of wisdom. This is our underlying message for our theme this year. My sister gave her chapel speech 2 years ago before she graduated from Appleby. While I was writing this speech, I sat at my desk and I thought back to that moment. All I wanted was to have that same experience. To be completely honest, that is why I struggled writing this speech. Because my mind was so distracted on what this could have been and not what it is. The reality is, I'm here today in the John Bell Chapel today, speaking to all of you, sharing my experiences. It's exactly what I told all of you in assembly. Let's just roll with it. And I guess I don't listen to myself enough because I'm bad at it too sometimes. And that's okay, because we're all learning through this together. Roll with it is not about giving into the new normal. It's about an encouragement to accept our circumstances, adapt to change, overcome our challenges, and strive for a better path forward. And this whole adapting thing is something that we've all been doing. You might not even realize it, but we all do it. And I'd like to share some of my own personal stories where I've learned how to adapt. I'd like to speak about a personal experience of mine that reminds me of the invisible challenge and frustrations having to do with COVID. It's also something that required lots of patience, acceptance, positivity, and ability to adapt. Everyone always talks about how grade 11 is one of the busiest and hardest years of high school. For me, it started off well. I was trying really hard, putting in the work, but after first term, things did not go as expected. I like it when things go as planned. I make lists, to-dos, and calendars, and that's all great. Staying organized is a helpful tool, but sometimes unexpected things happen that disrupt your plan. Academically, my grade 11 year was off to a good start, and I was just about to embark on a school trip to Nepal. Then, on November 9th, I got hit in the head playing hockey. It was a total fluke, and I didn't really think much of it at the time. I went home later that night, and I felt fine. It wasn't until the next morning when the pounding headaches began. And even then, I didn't think much of it. I actually played another game that afternoon. But that night, my parents noticed that I was acting really different. And I started to get really quiet as the headaches continued. That week, I couldn't get out of bed. I ended up missing an entire week of school, and the headaches were getting more debilitating. I fell behind on my academics and my athletics, and I went an entire week without seeing or talking to anyone. I just stayed inside, and that week was really tough for me. mostly because I had so much time on my hands to just lay there and think. And all I could think about was everything that I was missing. Being with my friends, playing in hockey tournaments, and my trip to Nepal that was quickly approaching. I had been looking forward to this trip for almost 2 months, not to mention all of the planning and gear I had bought in preparation. In that moment, I just had to accept the circumstances and roll with it. There was no point in worrying about what happened. The reality is that I would have to take some time off and recover from my concussion. The good news is I ended up getting cleared the day before my departure to Nepal, and trekking in the Himalayan mountains turned out to be a terrific therapy for a concussion, despite the altitude and the hard physical component. Fast forward to the new year, 2020. I came back to school full-time for the first time in 2 months since my concussion. I'd finally started getting caught up on my academics and getting back in shape for hockey. And I was finally getting back to that state of feeling normal again. It was January 18th, 2020. I went to school on a Saturday to play in a hockey game against a school from Ohio. I went into the corner to retrieve a puck with a guy 2 strides behind me. He lifted his elbow, and I took a hit to the head. Initially, I was filled with panic. In that moment, all I could think of was that I couldn't go through that same painful experience again. I think I was in denial. I was so scared of going through that same injury again that I didn't let my body tell me what was actually going on. I skated back to the bench. I missed 1 shift, and then I went back out there. I drove back to Toronto to play in my second game that day, and it wasn't until that night when the headaches came back. And I got really upset. I started thinking again about everything that could go wrong. This happened just as I was starting to feel normal again. Now with my 3rd concussion, it felt like an enormous setback. That was a low point for me because I felt like my grade 11 year was slipping away. And at that point, I just didn't want to go through the entire recovery process all over again. I didn't think I had the patience and the strength to regroup. For those of you that haven't experienced a concussion, it has similar invisible vulnerability to it, much like COVID and the mental health damages that come with it. Every concussion is different, but the debilitating consequences are frightening and troublesome. You feel off and not yourself. Some days are okay, but many days are bad, and it's hard to know if you're getting better or not. I did my best to hide my injury at school, and I tried hard to power through it. But after weeks of this, I was falling behind in school and hockey. I could function throughout the day, but I wasn't myself, and I was hiding that pain. Just like the loneliness and stress that COVID brings to many people, my post-concussion syndrome was dragging on, and I could feel similar mental health issues. I think the whole time I tried to hide it from people was because I didn't want to seem weak. I wanted to hide it because I didn't want to believe that there was something wrong with me. But I struggled a lot with my concussions. And it's not necessarily something that I love to talk about, but I didn't feel like myself. And that is something that bothered me for a really long time. And I started to realize that after 5 months. 5 months, which is roughly 152 days of constant headaches. And I still get them. And I still have trouble doing certain things. But at the end of a long experience with post-concussion syndrome, I was able to come away with some valuable learning experiences. And I think I'm stronger because of it. So I would encourage all of you to roll with it. Accept your circumstances, reframe them, and adapt them in order to overcome your challenges. COVID is a practice session for the game of life. Inevitably, we will all face so many more challenges along the way. But together at Appleby, we can make the best out of this situation if we roll with it. In fact, I would like to encourage all of you to think creatively and pursue some unique personal goal or experience this year to make it a memory. And let's keep it in perspective. Everyone is working hard together to move the same mountain. Let's make this school year something that people will remember. And now will you please imagine standing and singing hymn number 418, Draw the Circle Wide. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my chapel speech.